Hello there! The Gift of Maggie is a short story written by William Sidney Porter, an American short story writer. His literary works have been published under the pen name O. Henry. He lived in terrible poverty in New York when he began to create stories to earn his living. The story is about genuine love, which captures the spirit of Christmas more than any present we could give to another person. Despite their difficulties, they go to the extent of making each other feel loved and cherished. The Gift of the Maggie is a Christmas story that has remained popular for many years after its publication. Let's hear it. The Gift of the Maggie. $1.87. That was all. She had put it aside, 1 cent and then another, and then another, in her careful buying of meat and other food. Della counted it 3 times. $1.87. And the next day would be Christmas. There was nothing to do but fall on the bed and cry. So Della did it. Only $1.87 to buy a gift for Jim. Her Jim. She had many happy hours planning something nice for him. Something nearly good enough. Something almost worth the honor of belonging to Jim. The James Dillingham Youngs were very proud of 2 things which they owned. One thing was Jim's gold watch. It had once belonged to his father, and long ago it had belonged to his father's father. The other thing was Della's hair. If a queen had lived in the rooms near theirs, Della would have washed and dried her hair where the queen could see it. Della knew her hair was more beautiful than any queen's jewels and gifts. If a king had lived in the same house with all his riches, Jim would have looked at his watch every time they met. Jim knew that no king had anything so valuable. So now, Della's beautiful hair fell about her, shining like a falling stream of brown water. It reached below her knee. It almost made itself into a dress for her. And then she put it up on her head again, nervously and quickly. Once she stopped for a moment and stood still while a tear or 2 ran down her face. She put on her old brown coat. She put on her own brown hat. With a bright light still in her eyes, she moved quickly out of the door and down to the street. Where she stopped, the sign said, Mrs. Sofronie. Hair articles of all kinds. Up to the 2nd floor, Della ran and stopped to get her breath. Mrs. Sofronie, large, too white, cold-eyed, looked at her. Will you buy my hair? Asked Della. I buy hair, said Mrs. Sofronie. Take your hat off and let me look at it. Down fell the brown waterfall. $20, said Mrs. Sofronie, lifting the hair to feel its weight. Give it to me quickly, said Della. Oh, and the next 2 hours seemed to fly. She was going from one shop to another to find a gift for Jim. She found it at last. It surely had been made for Jim and for no one else. There was no other like it in any of the shops, and she had looked in every shop in the city. It was a gold watch chain, very simply made. Its value was in its rich and pure material. Because it was so plain and simple, you knew that it was very valuable. All good things are like this. It was good enough for the watch. As soon as she saw it, she knew that Jim must have it. It was like him. Quietness and value. Jim and the chain both had quietness and value. She paid $21 for it, and she hurried home with the chain and 87 cents. With that chain on his watch, Jim could look at his watch and learn the time anywhere he might be. Though the watch was so fine, it never had a fine chain. He sometimes took it out and looked at it only when no one could see him do it. When Della arrived home, her mind quietened a little. She began to think more reasonably. She started to try to cover the sad marks of what she had done. Love and large-hearted giving, when added together, can leave deep marks. It is never easy to cover these marks. Dear friends, never easy. Within 40 minutes, her head looked a little better. With her short hair, she looked wonderfully like a schoolboy. She stood at the looking glass for a long time. If Jim doesn't like me, she said to herself, before he looks at me a second time, he'll say, I look like a girl who works for money. But what could I do? Oh, what could I do with $1.87? At 7, Jim's dinner was ready for him. So, how do you like this story so far, friends? As we get closer to the climax, things start to become interesting. Do you think James would fight Della over her haircut? Or do you think James would be overjoyed with her new look? Let's discover in the next video what the story's suspense holds.